Jabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jabihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnu Padmahamsa Paribrajagacharya Astotadashata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Samveda Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Presha Padreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamasloka Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Swapandantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyayivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Good morning. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we're reading from the 10th canto, 88th chapter, verses 17 through 20. Iti adistastam asura upadhavat swagatrata kidara atma kravyena juvanodni mukham haram. Iti adistas tam asura upadhavat swagatrata kedara atmaskravyena juvanoni mukham haram. Iti adischas tam asura upadhavat swagatrata kedara atmakravyena juvanogni mukham haram. Please chant. Iti adischas tam asura upadhavat swagatrata kedara atmakravyena juvanogni mukham haram. Iti, thus, adishta, instructed, tam, him, Lord Shiva, asuraha, the demon, Upadhavat, worshipped, Swa, his own, Gatrata, from the bodily limbs, Kedare, at the holy place Kedarnath, Atma, his own, Gravyena, with the flesh, Juvanaha, offering oblations, Agni, the fire, Mukam, whose mouth, Haram, Lord Shiva. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Shukadev Goswami continued, thus advised, the demon proceeded to worship Lord Shiva at Kedarnath by taking pieces of flesh from his own body and offering them as oblations into the sacred fire, which is Lord Shiva's mouth. Texts 18 and 19. Vrikasura became frustrated after failing to obtain a vision of the Lord. Finally, on the seventh day, after dipping his hair into the holy waters at Kedarnath and leaving it wet, he took up a hatchet and prepared to cut off his head. But at that very moment, the supremely merciful Lord Shiva rose up out of the sacrificial fire, looking like the god of fire himself, and grabbed both arms of the demon to stop him from killing himself, just as we would do. By Lord Shiva's touch, Vrikasura once again became whole. Text 20. Lord Shiva said to him, my friend, please, stop. Ask from me whatever you want, and I will bestow that boon upon you. Alas, you have subjected your body to great torment for no reason, since I am pleased with a simple offering of water from those who approach me for shelter. Quite the sequence of events. Vrikasura has realized it's not quite working out for him. So he decides the next course of action is to chop off his own head. In this day and age, we have a tendency to also make some unnecessary sacrifices. It's not at all uncommon for one to use their entire life in pursuit of happiness, thinking, when I get to this, I'll be happy. When I have this much of that, I'll be happy. When I'm this old and I have this, that, or the other, I'll be happy. When I have him or her or it or whatever, I'll be happy. And then they reach the end of their life and find that they're still unsatisfied. The general culture in this day and age is that we work for 45 years or so and then retire so we can enjoy. But by the time we're at the age of retirement, the body's not so capable of enjoying anymore. Most of the facilities have gone. So one who reaches that point just becomes frustrated, thinking, oh, I was supposed to enjoy now, and now I have these problems and those problems, and this is going on and that's not going on. And most of the people I talk to at that point, they're just about as miserable as when they were working, saying, oh, I'll be happy when I'm retired. So it's a quite useless system that we've developed that only really benefits those who are at the top of the hierarchy. On a mundane level, it's a useless system. But on a spiritual level, it's also a useless system. So, someone who has some intelligence about the way things are supposed to be set up should, ideally out of compassion, try to explain to those who clearly have no idea what's supposed to be going on, what the actual point of life is. In this verse, we see somebody who's sacrificing needlessly, and we see what a devotee does when they see someone who's making needless sacrifice. When Shiva sees Vrika offering his own flesh into the fire, he becomes disturbed. Up until this point, Shukadeva Goswami has been establishing the prominence of the mode of passion within Shiva and his followers. And in this verse it switches to Shukadeva Goswami explaining the ignorance of Lord Shiva's followers. But we can also understand that it's not just passion and ignorance that are within Lord Shiva, but that he also possesses the mode of goodness, and that's becoming prominent within Lord Shiva. So when Shiva sees Vrika doing this nonsense, he decides, all right, it's time I step in. And he more or less says, whoa, cool it, man. You're doing entirely too much. I would have been happy with some water. You don't need to go chopping your head off. Obviously, you want something pretty bad if you're going to cut your head off for it. So, what do you want? This is Lord Shiva's mercy to the ignorant. Lord Shiva doesn't want to see those who are the most ignorant and foolish doing something so extreme as cutting off their own head. There's some commentaries from our acharyas on the 19th verse. We see the word we being used, where it says, Lord Shiva, the supremely merciful Lord Shiva, rose up out of the sacrificial fire, looking like the god of fire himself, and grabbed both arms of the demon to stop him from killing himself, just as we would do. So in that connection, Srila Rupa Goswami says that Lord Shiva is not coming from a place of lordship, but from a place of humility. And in a similar manner, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, as we prevent a man from killing himself in grief, so Shiva prevents Vrikasura from killing himself. Vrikasura's body was restored. So we're seeing the humanity, the compassion, the love for the ignorant, foolish miscreants that Shiva has. And Sanatana Goswami indicates that Shiva is speaking here out of affection and that he is alarmed by the current situation. This pastime, seen from the angle of Lord Shiva's mercy, is, I think, particularly exemplary for devotees. If we take an honest look around what's going on in the world, we can see that everyone is suffering in one way or another. And they're making needless sacrifice. This is true for the people in general, but it can also be true for devotees as well. So if we see another person suffering, it's our duty to help them. It's our duty to help them find the reason, the source of their suffering, and help them avoid that suffering. And as devotees, it's our job to try to help them redirect their life from whatever is causing suffering to the ultimate goal of life, the ultimate source of happiness, which is Krishna. We can find that most people are miserable in this world because their attention is misdirected. The education that's given now is that the point of life is to work hard, get nice things, have an attractive spouse, have nice children, accumulate so many material possessions, a house, a car, big TV, all of these things. And then at the end of life, you can enjoy. But having honest conversations with people, we see that those who are young don't see that there's a future for them. Even people my age, we've just come to the realization we're probably not going to get Social Security when we're of the age that we're supposed to get Social Security. Those who are middle-aged or frustrated in one way or another by how their life's been going, that they haven't made enough material progress, or the political and economic problems of the world are wreaking havoc on them. And those who are elderly are frustrated with their poor health and with the inability to enjoy that they've found they are now dealing with, despite thinking that when they were young, they would sacrifice their earlier years so that they can enjoy now. They're finding that that's just not possible. This is at least what I've found in speaking to different people, that everyone's dissatisfied for one reason or another. So, as devotees, we should have some understanding what the real goal of life is. And ideally, we should be able to articulate that to others. If we can't articulate to someone clearly one point of our philosophy or another, then we don't have a very strong grasp of that philosophy. Expertise means being able to explain anything, even to somebody who is unintelligent or someone who is a child. If you can explain Krishna to a child, then you really understand Krishna. So we should be able to say in a plain and simple manner, according to who we're speaking to, in a way that's appropriate for them, why they're miserable and what they can do about it. It's more than saying, here, have a book, read it, see you later, good luck. And it's less than giving a full dissertation on the ultimate goal of life, prem prayojan. But we should be able to explain something, why you're frustrated with material life, and what the actual solution to that is. But we should also be sure that what we're saying is matching what we're living. If we're also miserable and we tell someone, you're miserable because you're not in Krishna consciousness, then we're not actually helping them. We're being hypocritical. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, one who has life, he can preach. So we should be sure, if we're telling people you're miserable, that we are also not so miserable ourselves. We should speak according to our position, how much life we have. It's normal that we struggle, even in devotional service, and it's fine that we have difficulties. But it's not okay to have difficulties and speak as if our life is perfect just because we're a devotee. The truth is that most of us aren't perfectly situated in devotional service yet. But we can still say something about devotional service to those who don't know anything. We just have to be honest in what we're saying. And we have to have some intelligence about how we're saying it. So our presentation should be such that we're not presenting that we're perfect already, unless we are, but that we are becoming perfect, and that anyone can become perfect by following this process. Lord Shiva in this pastime, he's not coming and saying, "Stop, you idiot." He's speaking very sweetly with concern and compassion to Vrika. He addresses him as my friend. He is alarmed for this person. So, the acharyas have pointed out that he's doing the same thing that we do when we see someone who's harming themselves, when we see someone who is in one way or another attempting suicide. Any sane person will try to intervene because we don't like to see people suffer. Even if we don't know that person, we still don't like to see people suffer. Suicide is quite an unnatural thing, even in this very bizarre world that we find ourselves in. So it's an innate duty within humans to do what we can to try to prevent it. It's a base level of humanity. But as devotees, sometimes we see others in an unhappy condition. We see others committing spiritual suicide. And we don't take the time to understand their issues and try to address them and help them properly. And if we don't do this for each other, then how are we going to do it for others? And even if we do it for others, and we make other people into devotees, but we don't do it for other devotees, then they're going to become devotees and say, well, gosh, they were really nice to me before, and now they're just kind of passive. We can see this sometimes, that we're very nice to people who are new. But if someone's been around a while, we kind of almost write them off. We don't exercise the same amount of care or grace for others. We can be all too quick to throw philosophy at somebody else's problems in a very dry and heartless way. And then if that happens to us, we recoil. It's not a very pleasant thing. But But when we do this, it's quite ignorant, because usually if we're throwing philosophy at another devotee, that devotee hopefully already knows the philosophy. And when we do it to the people in general who don't know our philosophy, then we just come off as insensitive, egotistical, holier-than-thou proselytizers. In both scenarios, it's a useless endeavor. When people in general come to us for relief from their problems, we don't have to overtly preach to them. The ideal actually is to follow the example that's set by Narada Muni. The Chaitanya Charitamrita tells a story of Narada Muni as he's walking through the jungle going to Prayag, and he comes across several animals that are lying on the ground, writhing in agony, half dead. And Narada, being Narada, becomes curious and decides to go off the path to investigate what's going on. Which is, it's a dangerous enough act to walk through a jungle. But to go off of the path in the presence of a hunter is far more dangerous. So, Narada's Narada. He's going to do it anyway. So he comes upon Magrari and sees him in the act of half killing and torturing some animals. But his first action isn't to chastise or criticize or proselytize or any other eyes. Instead, Narada approaches him in a humble mood. He says, "I come to you to settle a doubt in my mind." He asks if the half-killed animals that he's been seeing belong to Magrari. And when Magrari confirms, yes, this is all my doing, Narada asks for a favor. He doesn't say, "Stop doing that, it's wrong." He asks for a favor. Magrari's a simple kind of person, so he assumes that what Narada wants is some pelts, because he's a hunter. Hunters have lots of pelts. But instead, Narada asks that if you're going to keep killing animals, please do so in such a way that they die. Don't torture them anymore. And it seems kind of peculiar that someone who's such a great Vaishnava would ask someone to kill animals completely. But within the context, within the circumstance, if he asked a hunter to stop killing animals, well, that's his livelihood. It's like asking a fish not to swim. That's just what hunters do. So he goes with something that's a little bit better and asks him to kill the animals completely. And this is because Narada knows that Magrari isn't surrendered to him. So there's no scope of asking for such a big change. He's just some random person who strolled up to Magrari in the jungle. So what right does he have to say, "Hey, stop doing your livelihood"? Narada explains to Magrari, he says, "My dear hunter, your business is killing animals. That's a slight offense on your part. But when you consciously give them unnecessary pain by leaving them half dead, you incur very great sins. All the animals that you have killed and are given unnecessary pain will kill you, one after the other, in your next life and in life after life. So Narada gives a little bit more of a reasonable request. And he actually has some chance at this point to affect some change in Magrari's life. But even Narada can't get someone to flip their whole life on their head. So we can't expect, when we're talking to others, that they immediately stop all of their sinful activities, all of their nonsense, all in one day. It's just not a reasonable thing. Just in this lifetime, so many people are indoctrinated into sinful activity. What to speak of the fact that we've all been here since time immemorial, and we're expecting such quick results out of somebody who might have never had any contact with a sadhu or with a devotee before. Bhakti is a gradual process, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So if we're expecting overnight change from anyone, even from ourselves, we should expect to be disappointed. So because Narada proposed a slight change to Magrari, Magrari became open. And he asked Narada, he said, "I've been taught this business from my very childhood. Now, I'm wondering how I can become freed from these unlimited volumes of sinful activities. My dear sir, please tell me how I can be relieved from the reactions of my sinful life. Now I fully surrender unto you and fall down at your lotus feet. Please deliver me from sinful reactions." So Magrari surrendered to Narada. And with that surrender, Narada has a little bit more room to work with Magrari. But that surrender doesn't mean he can completely force him in the other direction. It's like weaving a wicker basket. When you're trying to weave a basket, the sticks have to be flexible. They have to be soaked in water for some time so they become flexible and malleable. But even with very flexible sticks, if the weaver is too rough, the sticks are still going to snap. So instructing someone else, or even instructing ourselves in Krishna consciousness, is the same. We have to first have the qualification. We have to know how to weave the basket. And then we have to ensure that the person first wants to hear our instructions and that they're ready to hear and apply what we share with them. And we have to make sure that we don't share with them too much. After Magrari surrenders to Narada, he asks the question, "If I break my bow, how shall I maintain myself?" This is someone who, as he said, he's been trained to be a hunter. This is how he provides for himself and his wife. So if he quits his job, how is he going to provide? Narada doesn't say, "This is a stupid question." Narada reassures Magrari before giving him any further instruction, telling him that whatever is needed, Narada says, I will personally provide for you. And after that reassurance, then Narada begins to instruct Mrigari. He says, give away your valuables to Brahmins, leave your home and take only a set of clothes, one each for you and your wife, build a cottage by the river, plant Tulsi and take care of her, and chant Hare Krishna. Then Narada puts Mrigari's fear completely to bed and says, every day I shall send sufficient food for you both. You can take as much food as you want. And we see that in a modern context, that Srila Prabhupada also teaches this way. That ISKCON should be the premier example for how to live. Across his purports, conversations, and letters, Srila Prabhupada uses the phrase peace and prosperity 195 times. It's not an insignificant number. So it's foolish for us to think that we should only speak about Uttama Bhakti. Srila Prabhupada says art means a full belly. And in a similar way, spiritual advancement means we first take care of the basic needs of the body. So with everyone, including ourselves, we should be addressing the basic needs before we start getting heavy with the philosophy. Otherwise, we're not just wasting time, but in some cases, we're driving away people from the ultimate goal of life. So this applies not just to people in general, but it applies to devotees, it applies to ourselves. Unless one's at the level of the 6 Goswamis, then the body needs to be taken care of. Srila Prabhupada says first we take care of our health, sadhana comes second, and service comes after sadhana. If we don't have our health, we don't have any scope for either of the other two. We might not be this body, but we're in the body, and we need to do our best to take care of it. This body is a gift from Krishna to each of us. Instead of an animal birth, which at least I deserve, Krishna's given me this body with some facility for intelligence, for questioning, for finding out the ultimate goal of life. Such a valuable gift, but sometimes we write it off because it's material. We shouldn't expect that we're athletes or supermodels or, the healthiest people on the planet, but we shouldn't be suffering from ill health. And we shouldn't be running these bodies into the ground in the name of service. We have to defend against the false renunciation of bodily needs. Again, we're not the 6 Goswamis, so we have to do things regularly, like eating and sleeping. And when we're dealing with others, we should also be in the same mood that once the health, the bodily issues, the living issues are sorted out, we should be sure that the person we think we need to preach to actually wants to hear it. There's, usually some good intention behind it, but too much preaching at the wrong time to somebody who's not willing to hear it. It's arrogance on our part, and it's repulsive on theirs. And they usually end up going away. So we should be walking the walk before we expect somebody to follow our talk. And at least what I've found is that in preaching, the relationship should be there first. There's nothing worse than getting advice from a stranger which you haven't asked for. And a phrase that I'm really fond of is, advice which is not asked for is actually criticism. We know how deadly criticism can be to our bhakti lata. It's like pouring poison directly on the root. So we should be careful not to give unwanted advice, because it's more or less just criticizing others. And it doesn't matter if we're criticizing or if we're hearing someone criticized, it's very detrimental to our spiritual life either way. Narada didn't find fault with Magrari, but spoke with him from a humble position. He said, I am asking only one thing from you in charity. We should at least try to be in a proper position before we instruct someone, that they have asked us or surrendered to us for that instruction first, and that we are not giving instruction which we're not qualified to give. And even if someone's willing to surrender to us and they want to hear from us and we're qualified to speak, it's still not a green light for being cruel or heartless or heavy-handed. We should try to follow the example of Narada Muni, who speaks very lovingly and gently, even with someone as base as Vrika. The bhakti process is a process of love. It's a process of discipline, but it's a process of love. So if we're only having discipline, then the heart becomes hard. And if the heart becomes hard, it's a little bit harder to express that love. And if we're all running around hard-hearted, where is the attraction for others? Even Lord Shiva comes to this demoniac personality with love and compassion, and he pleads with Vrika to stop harming himself in the name of trying to make sacrifice to Shiva. This is love, and this is how our movement is ideally meant to operate. Srila Prabhupada says in the Nectar of Instruction that our whole society is going on because we're participating in the 6 loving exchanges that Rupa Goswami has laid out. That people are coming and accepting what little we have to offer, and they're making some offering in return. Shiva is going to have a little bit different of a reaction from the person he's trying to help than Narada. But that's okay. When we meet people where they're at that sometimes means there's a little bit of crudeness on their part. Not everybody's so refined. When we compare these two examples, the example of the verses we're reading and the example of Narada and Magrari, Magrari is a bit rough around the edges, but he's a lot more refined than Vrika is. We'll find out. But if we are going to meet harshness with everybody that we find, then that's going to also creep into our own lives. And that's not quite ideal for us. Usually when a devotee is met with harshness, they disengage instead of egging the person on in one way or another. This is because the devotee considers that by continuing to engage with someone who's being harsh with them, that person will continue to make offenses against a devotee. And making offenses against a devotee makes their life even more unfortunate. And most of the people that I've been meeting, they don't have any room for making their life more unfortunate. It's usually bad enough as it is. So instead, the devotee tries to minimize the offenses being made against them. And we'll understand a little bit more about this later in the chapter. So we can see from Lord Shiva's example that there's a need for us to be loving and compassionate to others, even the lowest among mankind. The devotees, the demonic, everyone is deserving of a little bit of love and compassion. And this is the ultimate mood of the devotee. So, with that, we have a little bit of time for questions or comments.
In the presentation, you'd drawn a lot of attention to the, one could say, sensitivity that's required to enter into some sort of space where there's going to be receptivity on the part of a person who one is recognizing as a devotee may be unhappy or suffering. It seems that, from an objective point of view, the path of self-realization would require that a person is recognizing that the activities they pursue or the mindset they have isn't actually conducive to happiness, in order for there to be some sort of fruitful dialogue or receptivity. So in most cases, persons who are already looking towards, I guess, spiritual science of some kind or another, have reached that understanding. So in general, it would seem that it certainly is a very big gap that one would have to cross if there isn't a recognition on the part of the receiver or the person that one, as a devotee, is recognizing is suffering, unless if they haven't actually reached that understanding or haven't actually started to look more broadly at mystical processes of some sort that may move them outside of their current reality. So just a comment.
You're totally right that those who are inclined towards self-realization are usually having this conception that whatever they're doing in the material world isn't working. But I've listened to a few Prabhupada lectures as of late where he's very specifically talking about dealing with those who are materially frustrated. And people who are materially frustrated might not be at that point yet, but there's still a window of viability for the preachers of the Krishna consciousness movement to interact with such a person and say, well, yeah, you seem kind of frustrated with things, things aren't working out how you expected them to or hoped them to or wanted them to. Would you like to know why? It just depends on the people that we're dealing with, what kind of avenue. Because if somebody's already interested in self-realization, then we don't need to condemn the material world for them anymore, because they've more or less realized that there's nothing there. But there's still plenty of people who think they can extract some sort of ras out of the material world. And we also have a approach for dealing with such people who are thinking like that but are becoming frustrated by their inability to. So that's who I was kind of having in mind, because there's very few people who are remotely endeavoring for self-realization. There's a lot of people that are still trying to enjoy, and a lot of them are very frustrated in it. Anything else? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.